Hello, welcome back to Buckle Up. My name is Rob Wilson and this is the MG4 Extended Range, and today I'm going to find out if it's any good. Okay, so let's start at the front as we usually do, and you would be forgiven for thinking this looks like every other MG4, and that's because it does. But I'll briefly cover off things that we've spoken about before. Massive MG badge. You've got this pointy design with your creases in your bonnet and your lights going like this, and you've got your strakes in the lights on the daytime running bits. You've got your indicators down here, some pretend aero stuff going on along here, but you do have real aero stuff here because you've got some active flaps here at the front which shall either be closed for improved aero or open for increased cooling. So let's move on to the side and see if there's been any major differences there. Right here at the side, and the only major difference are these aero covers fitted to the wheels to help improve that range now being 323 miles on a WLTP cycle. Further down, we've still got these black mirror caps, you've still got a black roof, and along the bottom here you've got this black skirt thing going along the bottom of the doors to help squash the size of the car down, because it's a lot taller than you think. You've still got these creases that are cut into the doors that fit into the lights and stuff going on here. You don't have the charging port on this side, it's on the other side, but charging 10 to 80% takes around half an hour, so it's about the same as everything else in this class. But let's go and have a look at the back and see what's going on there. At the back, shock, it's exactly the same as well. You've still got this fancy double spoiler thing going on with your rear brake light hidden in there. You now have a rear wiper on the MG4. This was not a thing when this car first came to the UK, and then every owner fed back that in the UK we get crap on the back of our windows in winter, so this is a nice thing to have. You've still got this weird diffuser thing going along the bottom in an attempt to be sporty, and then you've got this fantastic light bar which looks really, actually genuinely quite good at night with these crisscrosses going in it. Let's open up the boot where we can find 363 litres of space. And if you fold down the rear seats, that increases to 1,165 litres. Your cables come in and bag, which just sits in the boot somewhere. And then underneath the boot floor, there's a tiny weeny little bit more room, but you can't actually lower the floor into that space, so it's basically pointless. Tyre inflation, that sort of stuff's hidden under there as well. There's a net on that side, but there's no tie-down hooks, probably cost saving. So let's go into the back seats and see if I fit. Okay, sitting in the back seats of the MG4, and first things first, let's talk about space back here. This seat is in my driver's position. I am 6'2" or 188 centimeters tall, and as you can see, my knees are a bit cramped behind the seat, and because of the shape of the back of the seat, my knees don't fit inside the cutout, so I'd have to sit a little bit man-spread-y. Headroom, if I sit all the way up straight, my head does touch, but obviously in the real world you don't do that, you slouch a little bit. I wouldn't want to be the middle passenger if I was also in here, although they would have a reasonable amount of foot space because there's a very small lump in the floor, but nothing that's going to mean that you have to push your feet into the outer passenger's footwells. In terms of some practical features back here, on the backs of both these front seats, we've got two little pockets up here, so you can pop your phone in one if you're a child in the back and watch your YouTube videos. You've also got seat back pockets on both the front seats. I've got a USB-A charging point here in the middle, but only one. And then there's a cubby down here in the back of the armrest. Not really sure what you would put in there though. Door bins are a decent size. There is no middle armrest here. It's just a fixed seat, but I'm delighted to report that MG have now fitted a middle headrest. Excellent. You've also got, speaking of safety, some Isofix on the two outer seats, which is behind a Velcro patch, which is quite good because it means that other manufacturers who have little plastic bits in there, you have to take them off, you lose them, whatever. You can't lose this, so that is good. But basically, that's it for back here. So let's hop up front and see what's going on there. Okay, so up front, first thing I want to talk about is this odd steering wheel. It's a square circle squircle thing going on. Reminds me a little bit of the Austin Allegro. But I'm not quite sure it's the right shape because my hand never seems to find it when I'm turning around corners because it's squared off at the top and the bottom, so it's... Anyway, that's probably a me thing. Then on the steering wheel, we have controls on the left-hand side, which are mainly for the cruise control. This has adaptive cruise control as standard, so that's a good thing. It doesn't quite have the most sophisticated lane keep assist. It's a little bit annoying. I know many people have reported on this, so you probably know that already. And then on the right hand side, it's more for changing through your menus, answering your phone. And then these buttons here are configurable. In this car, I have them set up with the volume because I think that's an important thing, and the skip track, and then this one for the adaptive cruise control, setting the distance and the speed, etc. I've then got these two star buttons which I can configure to have little different things that I want to control. So this one is currently controlling the drive mode of the car, and then this one is controlling the regen. I can configure one of these to also control the climate controls, which are buried in the screen, but this doesn't have it. And personally, I'd much rather just have a dial or a button or something here that I can press like a normal person, rather than having to configure star buttons and then your controls that were controlling the volume 5 seconds ago are now controlling something else. It's too confusing and stupid, and just have a button on the dashboard, for God's sake. Because of that, I then have to click on this tiny strip at the top and press the buttons on the screen, which is a bit fiddly, but I digress. Other things that I'm not really convinced about is having the fog light button here in the top left-hand corner of the screen, which is smaller than the tip of your finger, and I don't have particularly fat fingers, but you really have to aim to press that. And why can't that just be a button down here? You have buttons down here for controlling the mirrors. Why can't you just put another one there? Again, a little bit silly and frustrating. So let's move on to this plinth in the middle, which has got your wireless charging pad, which in my opinion is in the wrong place, because if you've got a MG4 X-Power, you might know that if you put your phone there and you accelerate, it fires it at you violently and strikes you in the stomach, which is a little bit irritating. You've got your drive controller here, so reverse, neutral, drive, all controlled with this twisty dial, and your electronic handbrake, which has auto hold on, so it does it by itself most of the time. Down here, we've got 2 cup holders, and the bottle of water that fits in there also fits in the door pocket nicely as well. And then above that is where you've got your charging stuff. So you've got a USB type C, a USB type A, and a 12 volt. You've got a tray behind this roll cover, which is actually a decent size. You've got a little net here for popping stuff in, maybe like a gate opener or garage opener or something like that could be kept in there. You've got a quite large cubby in here, which is a decent size and shape, and the glove box is nicely damped and a reasonable size as well. These seats operate electrically at the push of some buttons on the side of it. I'm not convinced that they're the most comfortable in the world, but they're fine enough. They've got some nice blue stitching on them as well, because this is a top spec trophy model. So that's it for up here. Let's go and drive it. Right, okay, so driving the MG4 extended range. And as I mentioned earlier, the range has now increased massively to 323 miles on a WLTP cycle, not in the real world. Now, MG have done that by quite simply just fitting a bigger battery. So it's now 77 kilowatt hours as opposed to 64 in the previous long range edition of this car. Now, it's not only the size of the battery that's increased, it's also the power figures. So we've now got 245 PS and 350 Newton meters of torque. Now that means a top speed of 112 miles an hour, which is basically irrelevant, and a 0 to 60 time that is much improved to 6.1 seconds, which is hot hatch territory. This car is still rear wheel drive with the motor also on the rear axle as well. So this chassis is quite fun for this sort of car. It's certainly more fun than the VW ID3, which this car is a competitor of. And speaking of the ID3, if you want an ID3 that does over 300 miles like this extended range, then you need to spend the wrong side of £40,000, whereas this car, the MG4, is £36,500 right now in this country. So a significant saving by opting for the MG over the ID3. While it may be more fun than the ID3, that doesn't mean that it's particularly exciting or rewarding to drive. The steering basically has no feel whatsoever, much like all of this car's rivals. None of them are particularly entertaining to drive, but that isn't really the point of this model. If you want fun, MG do the X-Power version of the 4, which we've already tested on the channel, link somewhere. In terms of driving dynamics, we've covered this a lot before. It's perfectly fine for this segment. It's, you know, grips in the corners like now. We're on some more back roads, and it's perfectly planted and stable and completely predictable. Even with the rear wheel drive setup, it doesn't feel sporty by any measure. It's certainly not intimidated by this kind of driving. Now, range, electric cars. This is the big one, because I said it's 323 miles on the WLTP cycle. Right now on my dashboard it says it's got just over 50%, 52% of charge, and the range it's giving me is 138 miles. So you can do the maths on that one. Basically it's going to be doing 270-ish miles on 100%, and that's, well, 60 miles below what the claimed range of the car is. But crucially, when I'm filming this video right now, and most of the week that I've had this car, it's been quite chilly here in the UK. It's currently 5 degrees according to the car's internal screens, and we know how much that temperature affects electric vehicles. So in the grand scheme of things, it's not actually that bad, because if you were driving this around in summer temperatures, upwards of 15-20 degrees, that range is going to massively improve, and therefore I'm very confident that this car is an over 300 mile car in the right conditions. I don't doubt that, and indeed many people have tested these and proved that they can do those sort of miles. One thing I do want to talk about briefly is the MG Pilot system that comes standard on all MG4s. So it's got most of the safety stuff that you would expect to see nowadays on your car. You've got your adaptive cruise control, you've got your lane keep assist, which is a little bit irritating and maybe not quite as refined as European rivals. You've got your city emergency braking and all of that lovely stuff. Overall, it's nice that they've incorporated this as a standard thing in the MG4. But I guess that's probably enough nattering on from me, so what I'll do now is I'll pull over and I'll go and do a proper conclusion. Okay, so conclusion time, the MG4 extended range. Things I like: I think it looks good. I think it's priced extremely well. I think it's achieved its long-rangedness goal. Things I don't like: the interior is a bit there, the infotainment, don't like all of the things being in the screen. But if you want the absolute most amount of miles for the least amount of money, there's your answer. So, thank you very much for watching. If you've enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like, comment down below and let me know your thoughts on the extended range MG4. Most importantly though, please do subscribe, and if you want to support the channel, you can do so in two ways. That is by becoming a member or buying some lovely merch which I'm sporting today. But thank you again, and I shall see you next time. Goodbye.